is here. The movie is finally here. Giant robots and giant monsters are back on the silver screen. If you can't tell by now, this is the review for Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim. Hey, I finally got it right. Little in-joke for those of you who keep up with the podcast. So, you know what, we're going to try and keep this a very spoiler-light review. I'm only going to talk about a couple of things that happened within the first, 15, 20 minutes max, because honestly a lot of that stuff is retread from the trailer. Just to kind of get you guys caught back up. Basically the movie opens up where, like they tell us in the trailers, you know, there's a rift in the ocean, and out of this rift, giant monsters, which kaiju, for those who are the uninitiated, which kaiju being Japanese for, well, giant monster. These kaiju come out of the rift in the ocean and just begin attacking and waylaying all these different cities. Meanwhile, the rest of the world decides, hey, we've tried bombing them, we've tried hitting them with airplanes, we've tried shooting big guns at them, we've dropped nukes on them, we have thrown sharp sticks. Then finally some guy comes along and says, you know what, I know what would be a great idea. What would that idea be? You see, what I'm thinking is, we could totally just build giant robots and just, you know, make these people get in these giant robots and fight these giant monsters. It'll be totally awesome. Meanwhile, the people in charge are probably thinking, drug test him. In the end, these people realize the giant robot's probably a bad idea. Called Jaegers in the film, which is German for hunter. No real correlation there except for that they hunt kaiju. Yeah, you get what we're... The Jaegers are humanity's last chance for survival. Let's go ahead and drop a lot of the story element, because to be completely honest, I want a lot of this to be a surprise for you. I do want to go ahead and come out on the front end and say, as far as stories go, Pacific Rim is kind of flimsy. Now, I know what you guys are probably thinking. Dude, it's giant robots versus giant monsters. How can you mess that up? It's actually easier than you might think. If you've watched any of the Michael Bay directed Transformers, Abominations, then you know what I'm talking about. Now, what I'm talking about here isn't necessarily a bad thing, because honestly, this would be hard to pull off. Guillermo del Toro is basically pulling the role of Atlas, but instead of being the world on his shoulders, it is the plot of this film. Because even though it's a simple plot, it's so heavy for anybody to attempt to put on the silver screen and get people to believe it. That's really where the movie's maybe one and only true failing comes into play, is with the story. It's a great story. I believe it. Maybe you'll believe it. But the thing is, it's gonna alienate some people. Some people are gonna come in and go, I'm not buying this. Or you'll even get some people who'll come in and be like, I just don't get it. Meanwhile, you know, I'm hanging out with the other hipsters who are like, oh no, dude, I totally get that, man. That's totally like real Evangelion, you know, some whole giant Robo or some Gigantor type shit. And you know what, for us that's cool, but this is a geek's movie, and it's gonna alienate people, and that's one of its only failings. The only other possible thing I could cite this film for is the fact that it does drag a little bit, you know, lengthwise. It's about 2 hours and some change. I want to say about 2 hours and 10 or 15 minutes. But other than that, I mean, it's really a pretty good film. Your standouts here are going to be the stars. That's going to be any day of the week. You have Charlie Hunnam as the main character. He's playing Raleigh Beckett. He's the White Knight of this movie. He is the guy. If this were an anime, if this were Voltron, he would be that guy who says, "And I'll form the head." Sounds kind of dirty now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it's pretty damn dirty. And he actually does a pretty good job here. I mean, he's basically being Jax from Sons of Anarchy like he is on the show, but that's kind of a hard thing to distance yourself from when you've been doing that for 5 years. You also have Idris Elba who comes in. He's playing Marshal Stacker Pentecost. He's the leader of the Jaeger resistance, fighting back against the kaiju and just really want to bust some heads. You know this guy has some baggage early on, much like how Charlie Hunnam has baggage, you know, with his character. Stacker Pentecost is that guy that you've seen the trailers. You know this guy's got a speech coming, so you know he's the guy everybody's going to rally around. He's the leader. If this were an anime, he would be that guy, the gruff, big, burly leader who's always mad and angry. And rocking a killer stash, by the way. Another good standout is Rinko Kikuchi, who plays Mako Mori. And she's kind of the, I guess, not, I don't want to call her the shrinking violet of the group, because she really isn't. She's actually one of the Jaeger potentials. She's been, helping, rebuild the organization and I guess, repurpose some of these older Jaegers so they can go back out and take the fight to the kaiju. Now, as for your supporting cast, that's a different story. You see, some people are going to either like or dislike the supporting cast, because honestly, these are going to be where you find a lot of your anime tropes. Like, for instance, you got Charlie Day and you got Burn Gorman. These are your scientists. These are your very stereotyped cartoon scientists. You have Charlie Day on one hand, who is the guy who's like, yeah, we can totally do this, and yeah, the kaiju this and that, and yeah. And then you have Burn Gorman, who's all like, I'm an Oxford scholar. Bully. And these guys are cartoon characters. I mean, they are. But the thing is, that's what they were shooting for. You can tell. It's obvious. And to that I say, you know what? Bully, good job. The rest of the cast I won't even really go into, because honestly they don't get enough screen time to really matter. Just know that there are other Jaeger pilots out there, and they look like they should probably be a part of Voltron. Look, I get it. A lot of people have been making those comparisons, saying, oh, this movie's totally ripping off Evangelion. Oh no, this movie's totally ripping off Godzilla. Oh man, this movie is totally ripping off some obscure-ass anime, or Super Sentai, Tokusatsu, whatever. Look, we know. That's the point. The real question here is, does this movie achieve what it sets out to do? And I feel like it does. The special effects have come so far, and it's so much better than anything Michael Bay could have ever hoped to have dreamt up in any of his crappy Transformers movies. This movie is like Saturday Night Main Events, but with robots, for Christ's sakes. The monsters look cool. I mean, some people have said that they look the same, they all look alike, and I mean, yeah, they kind of have to, because it's a part of the story, and I won't go into it. But know that they are different creatures, and especially as you get closer to the end, they do start to look very different. One thing I also gotta say is that the 3D in this movie was pretty damn good. It was spot on. I honestly could not see how you would watch this movie without 3D. This movie sets out what it wants to do. This movie has basically created something that no other director probably could have pulled off as well as Guillermo del Toro, because he really loves what it is that he's brought to the table. This movie is the live-action anime. This is the movie that comes in and says, okay, look, we're going to take all this anime shit, all this giant monster shit, and we're going to put it in one movie. And they did it! Is the movie perfect? No. But you know what? I can go ahead and tell you guys right now. I already know what the rating for this movie is. I didn't even really have to wrestle with it. This movie, I can guarantee you, I'm getting the Blu-ray. I mean, I couldn't fight that. It's one of those movies, it was so close to getting a fan-freaking-tastic. And, I mean, honestly, I still kind of want to give it a fan-freaking-tastic. But I have to take note of the things that were kind of holding the movie back, which are some of the things I mentioned earlier. So guys, you tell me, what anime would you like to see made into a live-action movie, and who would you want to direct it? Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next round of content.